Sabin's problem of practice was that they were underserving students of color in the area of literacy. Their aim statement was that students of color in grade A through 2 will improve reading achievement in phonemic awareness and phonics as measured by iStation. And they did see improvement when they compared students month over month and to previous years. They began by looking at data in a different, more complex way. They individualized their literacy, professional development, and modeled instructional techniques. They also made sure that all students were exposed to grade level instruction.
Our biggest change idea was access to grade level phonics and then switching up our differentiation model from a pull out to a push in. Because what that allowed us to do is ensure that every child received grade level phonics and then differentiate within the classroom. So those kids who were struggling readers, especially our approaching kids, those were the kids that we called our at promise students. They were allowed to not only have that access to grade level phonics, but then right in the classroom, then we're able to get that double dip with the phonics or with the intervention teachers using CR Success. And then those students that really were understanding our phonics instruction, then we were able to allow for that application component of them being in decodable texts, writing about their really using those phonics principles so that we were able to see if that application was sticking. And as we started to think about, okay, so we're going to change this model, how do we support teachers and students with this new structure? And so that's where the empathy questions, I think, became so crucial in our understanding, because we were able to really target with our teachers especially, what's worked in the past and what hasn't worked in the past. And I will say one of the things, like as a leader of this work and who's been leading early literacy at Sabin for the last at least 6 years, at least the year before DPS even started down the route of early literacy, I think sometimes as leaders, we make assumptions about what teachers need, and then we build PD around those assumptions. And then teachers sit in there with like, why am I learning this? I already got this. But then when you add that layer of like, but what don't you have? And then how do we support you in that? And then I think by having teachers ask teachers, it really allowed for that just real honesty and vulnerability on our teachers' part to be able to lean in and say, you know what, actually, I don't think I really do teach phonics very well. I don't really understand why phonemic awareness is important. I don't know how to fit this into my schedule. And so based on the data that we collected through the empathy questions, and then also thinking about, you know, every kindergartner and first grader that I interviewed, of course, we're like, I'm a great reader. Reading is amazing. It's awesome. I'm so wonderful. But as you got to second and third grade, you really noticed that switch in their narrative of how they saw themselves as readers, because I picked specific students within the approaching range of the 40th to the 68th percentile on iStation. Those were our target kids. That, I think, elevated the understanding to teachers, like how important phonics instruction is, because once they're getting into more complex texts, their ability to decode is no longer a part of who they are as a reader. And then they start to see themselves as bad readers, and then they give up. One of the things that we tested and ended up not working is at first we thought we would have the interventionists just go in and do like side-by-side teaching, just because they are the gurus in phonics. We did that for about 6 weeks. I think that was good in the fact that it gave our teachers a model of what like strong phonics looks like when you're delivering it to students, but we weren't targeting as many kids. So that was something that we decided not to adopt and let go of, and then switch the model to 2020, where half the kids were receiving the core phonics instruction and the other half were either receiving that double dose of instruction or the application components independently. Really just thinking about professional development And we did a lot of work around what good phonics instruction looks like, along with the importance of phonemic awareness. The way that we tracked and measured the success of these change ideas was in two ways. We built trackers for all of our teachers, which I've always done that in the past. However, we looked at kids a little differently this year. We called them our at promise students. We built a data wall where we really we color coded the kids based on their ethnicity. So if you were a student of color, I want to say you got like a yellow dot, and if you were a non-student of color, you got a red dot. And the reason why we did that is because it really just elevated the inequities of how our students of color were showing up versus our non-students of color. We're outperforming them tenfold. We tracked them through all the way up until February, and continued to celebrate all of the kids that were in all of our at promise kids. We would star them as soon as they made 2 consecutive leaps in their data. So meaning they went from tier 2 to tier 1 2 consecutive times. And we were really starting to see so many kids starred. Just by being very transparent and all of our teachers knowing why we were doing this work. They knew design improvement through DU. I think they were excited to see where this was going to lead us. And I just think by intentionally tracking our students' success really led to the outcome of that narrative of our opportunity gap. The empathy questions brought that trust back to me, because I really was listening to what they were saying, and we weren't just willy-nilly rolling out PD that wasn't applicable for our teachers. I mean, in that moment, they were able to leave our professional development and try something right away. At the beginning of the year in September, we had 28% of our kindergartners on grade level. 17% of our students were in that approaching tier 2 range, and 56% of our students were significantly below grade level. If you jump to first grade, we had 32% of our students at grade level, 32% of our students are at tier 2, and then 37 at significantly below grade level. And then second grade, we had 63% at grade level, 18% at tier 2, and 19% at tier 3. And then really monitoring that data to see if the new idea was working. And what we were seeing is that kids were actually moving out of that tier 2, tier 3 faster than they had in previous years. Impacting historical patterns of inequity, I think one of the things that we did for students to ensure that they were all thriving is that before, when we looked at iStation data, we were really looking at those percentile ranks. And in previous years, we were only looking at that high level data. This time, not only were we pinpointing our at promise students, but then we were taking a bigger data dive into the actual iStation subcategories, which then allowed us to see some root causes of where their misconceptions were. You know, what is this a phonemic awareness? Is this a letter knowledge? Is this alphabetic decoding? And then as a collective whole, we were able to like look at those trend lines of our students and then think differently about how we might deliver the instruction the next week. So that impact wasn't by accident anymore, that we really were targeting where our students needed that targeted instruction. And whether it was our interventionist that was going to do that, or are we seeing a whole group?